Uh-oh. What should I
All right,
say?
over to you, Forrest.
Okay. Well, good morning. My name is Forrest like Gump, and I'm going to guide you through this process that I call it Thoughts on Essential Communication, on the essentials of communication. And I put it in a context when we have to communicate, sometimes in difficult situations. And it's not an esoteric academic approach to communication. It's one where I'm trying to, when you interact with colleagues, when you interact with your customers at the college, what's some of the best ways to communicate. So I'm going to try to share what I know, you share what you know. I would like you to participate. I know you can put on video or audio. Audio really works great if you have some comments or ideas, because I am going to ask you to do a case study or two where I need your feedback. So if that will be a big help to me. Let's see, what else can I say? My background, by the way, just real quickly, is government. I worked in county government for 21 years. I was on the adjunct faculty at Santa Ana College for 25 years, teaching 2 courses on Monday and Tuesday nights for a long time. And one of them was assertive communications and human relations. So I'm sort of in my wheelhouse in terms of what I did as an instructor. But when I worked for the county, I was also a boss, where I had staffs as large as 100 in some cases, and got involved in communication, working with employees, working with citizens, working with elected officials. I've stuck my foot in my mouth more times than I care to realize. And the public information officer reported to me. We did media relations. So that's a little of my background. Where communications really came into play for me, I used to be a prison guard, where I had captive customers. In fact, in one institution I worked in, there were several people that I went to high school with who were there as inmates. Didn't know it was going to be a reunion. But anyway, that's a little bit of my background. And so here I am standing in my office virtually with you, and it's somewhat of a new experience for me, so I'm sure we'll get through it. Okay, so what I would like you to do, if you have your handout that was sent to you, or it's up on the screen as well, on page 2, it's called Working Together to Communicate on the Toughest Problems. I'd like you to take a moment and read that, because there's a good moral to the story, okay? And I'll shut up and let you do it.
And for the folks that are on today's session, I'm actually still trying to find a way to actually disseminate this right now. So bear with me for just 1 second, and then hopefully we'll get it out to you right now.
So do you have time to get through that? I hope I gave you enough time. I think there's a good moral to the story, don't you? Here's just a premise. If you want people to tell you the truth, you have to allow them to. And I think good communication skills is a way to allow people to be open with you. And when you allow them to be open with you, I think sometimes it makes it a little easier for you to be open with them. So what I'm going to talk about today are the things that you have control over, because you can't control others. And on page 3 of your handout is just an overview of the workshop. And again, I'd like you to take a moment and read that, and then underline anything you think is important if you have it in front of you. But and then we're going to go into the meat and potatoes of the workshop. This is the fun part of the workshop, reading. Get through it? Okay. How many here, I don't know if it has audio on, how you can do this, but how many here ever had to communicate with a jerk? You can raise your hand or just say, yeah. Okay, yeah, okay. What happens is and I in my customer service class, which I'm going to be doing with you in about 2 weeks, I think, I talk about not calling people jerks, but some people behave that way. But I don't call them jerks because one of the things I want to talk about today is positive language, positive communication. So what I talk about are people that aren't jerks, but people whose behavior fit the description of a jerk. That way you don't have to call them that, all right? But we do deal with difficult people, and sometimes we can be difficult ourselves. And one of the things I'm going to weave through this morning's presentation are some communication techniques that are assertive. And I'm going to define assertiveness because it's one of those words, as we go through this, I'll define assertive. It's one of those words that we throw out there that sometimes I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. So I'm going to put this in the context of a case study where you're on the phone. And if you look at it where it says communicating assertively on page 4, I'd like you to read about good old Robert. And if your name is Robert, I apologize, okay? But you may know Robert. Go ahead and read that. And there's a question at the bottom, or an exercise at the bottom. You may be able to relate to this. Okay, how many know the Roberts of the world? Okay, you can raise your hands, or I see people raising their hands. Okay, good. It tells me how many participants raised their hand here. So far, 2 participants have raised their hand, all right? Now 4 or 5. Okay, now you're thinking about Robert. We're getting rolling here, all right? I'm still getting used to this. That fact, how does it know you raised your hand? I don't know, but anyway, we'll figure that out. But sure, you know the Roberts of the world. And down at the bottom, it says list the methods or guidelines you can follow to ensure you achieve your objectives in working with Robert. Any ideas on how you're going to work with him or approach them that you could either type out or just blurt out audio-wise?
Yes, for those that have don't want to participate, you can unmute yourself at this time. Okay, Rebecca.
I would first of all ask a question exactly to understand what the problem is.
Okay, sure. You know, that's a smart thing to do. You know what, you ever heard of Al Einstein? He was a buddy of mine. He said, if I had 1 hour to solve a problem, I'd spend the first 55 minutes defining the problem and the last 5 minutes coming up with a solution. So when you say define what the problem is, get to know what the problem is, I think that's really important. Any other comments on how you're going to deal with Robert from the group?
Oftentimes, this is Jose at admissions. Oftentimes what I do is I ask the Robert to explain to me or give me a summary of what the staff person that they dealt with told them. Okay.
And that's smart to do because what the staff person told them may not be what the staff person told them. Or it may be, right?
Exactly.
Yes. People perceive things differently in terms of how they're in the world, okay? And I don't know why everybody doesn't see the world like I do. Okay, well, that's because we don't. In fact, there's a thing, it's called the Great Contradiction. And the Great Contradiction, I used to use that in my writing class, which I used to teach. I haven't done that in ages. I forgot how to write. But the Great Contradiction is all people are alike, but in different ways. So we all perceive things, but sometimes we can perceive them in different ways. Any other comments on that? I'm going to share my 3 cents in a minute.
I would maybe ask the staff in the office to see if anybody would had contacted him or had been in contact with him, and maybe get like the underbelly of what maybe is happening.
Okay. Background
Try to get
information.
probe information to make sure that you have as much details as possible
Okay.
to kind of see how you could solve the problem when you contact the student
Okay.
or the person.
All right. And you get your sort of ducks in a row that way, don't you? And
Exactly.
and I think I'm preaching to the choir in this workshop. Maybe we should just go find a bar that's open. But what happens is that I think getting background information, defining the problem, any things you have to be ready for, maybe in the sense of how he might behave. I don't know if that's a good question. If he gets emotional or upset. How many deal with emotional or upset people? Okay, we all do, right? Of course, we've never been upset or emotional, but we have to deal with them. And so how many might want to walk away? How many have ever referred somebody to somebody else because you can't get to first base with them? You think that might be an option? Now, I'm not saying send all the bad apples to your colleagues, but one of the things you have to determine too is if you're the right person to respond. But get some background information, identify what the problem is. Let me share with you a baker's dozen of 13 things, 13 ideas, and I don't mean to overwhelm you with it. Some of these weave together that have worked for me. Now, whether they work for you, I hope they do, but I call it, because of the great contradiction, all people are alike in different ways. But really, there's nothing more unequal than the equal treatment of unequals in communication. You can't treat everybody the same, and not everybody's going to respond the same. So your power lies in changing your behavior. One thing I talk about in my customer service workshop, anybody, how many have kids? Okay. How many have more than one? So I see some hands going up. Are they different? Some days you say that kid can't be mine, right? Well, I have a son and daughter, and my son, he's a fire engineer paramedic for San Bernardino County. But when he was living at home, when I used to ask him to clean up his room, I used to have to tell him over and over again, Stephen, clean up your room. About the 15th time, get in there and clean it up. How many can relate to that? Of course, he wants to go somewhere, and I say, not until you clean up your room. So what does he do? He shoves all his crud under the bed and out the door he goes, which is all right with me. As long as I don't step on a sharp object barefoot in his room, I'm happy, because when I step on the sharp object, I may not condone child abuse, but I can understand it. Now, my daughter, Alicia, she's a middle school English teacher, teaching virtually now, okay? But when I used to ask her to clean up her room, she wanted to negotiate a deal. How many ever been manipulated, okay? In fact, she was pretty good at it, because after we negotiated the deal, I found myself the only person in her room straightening it up. But here's my point. What works in influencing my son, the approach I use, will not work with my daughter, and vice versa. So I've learned that my power doesn't lie in changing other people's behavior. My power lies in changing my behavior to influence other people. And that's true in communication. Have you ever told a joke to somebody, they laughed, you tell it to somebody else, it's not funny at all? Okay, so this communication thing, there's no, what's the word? There's no cookie cutter to it. It's something that you have to go with the flow, because you may say something that you think is sensitive and somebody else may think it's not so sensitive. So let me give you these 13 things. And number one, I'm on page 5, and I'm going to spend most of our time on this page. And then I have some other things back here that we can get to, or you can take with you. But don't become difficult yourself. Stay assertive. Let me ask you to visualize something. Can I go to the chalkboard here, Cyrus? Let me see.
I believe so, yeah. So you have share screen functions. I'll stop share on this.
Okay,
So
let me
if you go to share screen.
Okay, thank you. There we go. Now, I don't know how well I'm going to be doing this, but I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm just going to draw a line, okay? Everybody see that okay?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Then I'm going to take another line. Whoops, that's the same line. That's not doing it for me. There we go. Okay. That's an axis, a grid. And up at the top, I'm just going to put an H. That stands for high. I'm going to go down here to the bottom. That stands for low. And then I'm going to put another letter over here. H. Whoops. And that stands for high. You didn't know I was a graphic artist, did you? Here's what I would like you to do, and you're going to have to use your imagination. Well, not imagination. On that grid, going up the side of the grid there, this is when you have a concern for self. Okay? Down here is when you have a concern for others. Low concern for others, high concern for others. Low concern for self, high concern for self. Over here, is collaboration. And what you want to do in terms of collaboration is try to go this way to get to collaboration. And if you can see how the grid is, when you're collaborating, you have a high concern for the feelings and concerns of others. When you're collaborating, you also have a high concern for your own feelings and your own concerns, a high interest in your own concerns and feelings. And what you want to do in assertive communication is this. Excuse me. I could have had some prepared stuff for you, Cyrus, but I didn't know I was going to say this. This is assertive. When you have a high concern for yourself and not a concern for others, that's called being aggressive. I win, you lose. When you have a high concern for others at the expense of yourself, that's called being passive. They win, you lose. Now, sometimes taking those choices might be appropriate depending on the situation. If we had a full 4-hour conflict resolution class, we could get into that. But what I'm going to share with you, I believe, are ways for you to get to collaboration, where you take the concerns of others into the dialogue or the communication, but you don't expend and discount yourself also in that communication. Any questions on that? I don't know if that grid works for you, but I'm left-handed and this is a right-handed mouse. So that's the best I can do, okay? So don't become difficult yourself. Try to stay assertive. Collaborate as opposed to being aggressive. I don't care what you think, my way or the highway. Passive. Oh, let me give you what you want, even though I don't feel bad. How many have ever been passive in communication? How many have ever, you're with somebody and they say something and you keep your mouth shut, and then later on you say, why didn't I tell them what I really thought? You know, you get mad at yourself, you're a little guilty. How many have ever been aggressive? How many have things that push your buttons? You know what pushes my buttons? Insensitivity. Do you ever go into a store where they have the happy yellow face badge on the clerk's shirt? And he says, have a nice day. Sorry about that. It has about as much conviction as dried spit. And I felt like, don't you tell me what kind of day to have, any kind of day I want to have. And I remember I was in an airport and I yelled back at a guy that said that I was getting ripped off buying food at the airport. So that made me mad. And he said, have a nice day. And I said, I'll have any kind of day I want to have. Okay. I wasn't in balance. Okay. I was out of balance. But what I did later, after a couple of splits of wine, I went back to the snack bar and I apologized to him. Not because I'm a great guy, but the guilt was overwhelming, okay, because I shouldn't have yelled at him. And what happens is your values will send you back. If you feel guilty and you shouldn't have done it, you'll go back. So if you glare at somebody, if you use the wrong word, if you get too emotional and you later on feel bad about it, one of the best ways to take care of that guilt is to go back and apologize. You're not saying you're wrong and they're right. What you're trying to do is improve the relationship. And that's what assertiveness is all about. And sometimes that's very difficult to do. How many have to listen to people you don't want to listen to? Not me, of course, while you're here, but yeah, there's things that people and it's very difficult sometimes to go back. The person that does not go back to apologize probably doesn't care how you feel. Okay? And that's their value system at work. So communication is a lot about your belief system as well. So that's what assertiveness is. So number one, try to stay assertive. Now, if I'm up before, you have a board of education, a board of trustees, right? You want me to, there you go. You have a board of trustees. You think that's an intimidating encounter when you have to go up and speak before them? They're up on their dais, and they have a higher back chair than we have. That's how you know who's in charge. The highest back chair, they're the person in charge. And in fact, I spoke a couple of times to the Santa Ana College Board of Trustees. And there was one, and Board of Supervisors when I was with the County of Orange. And every now and then, a board member would take a shot at me. Okay, not at me personally, but to make a point. But it was a shot. Do you think I'm going to be aggressive with them in return? In a public hearing? Nope. You think I'm going to be passive? Well, there might be some smarts in that. Pick battles big enough to matter and small enough to win. But I don't think I'm ever going to get in trouble if I try to collaborate with them. And so there's exceptions to that. Number two, when somebody is upset, let them vent. Okay? How many ever vented? Okay? So if somebody's yelling at you, you're communicating with them, they don't like what you say, I let them vent. Get them back in balance. Because when we're not in balance, our feelings take over and we're not thinking. So I think that's a common sense thing that a lot of us do. What do you think? So going back to Robert, all right, you think you might let him vent a little bit? I'm going to go back to your previous stuff. I'm going to use that Robert scenario now for the rest of this. Do you think it's smart to let him vent a little bit? Yeah, because he's not going to be listening to you. Now, what happens if he starts cussing out and calling you names? Then you have to give him options for his future. I do believe that you have the right to be treated with some civility. But I also understand sometimes people are emotional for a lot of reasons, and you really don't know someone until you know their journey. And so letting them vent helps you get to that journey. So that's what I'm going to let Robert do. How many would agree with that? Let him vent a little bit.
Yeah. And I also want to share as well, too, that Kevin has also said, acknowledge frustration from the last encounter and explain, we are going to do better today.
Okay. Oh, very good. Very good. Yeah. And, you don't have to bring up the last encounter. He will. But that's a good way to respond to it. We don't want it to end that way and move on. Am I supposed to be able to see those chats somewhere? Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, don't worry. And I'm also moderating chats as well too. So.
Okay. All right. I'm glad you're here, Cyrus. I'm the village idiot when it comes to this. Anyway, never mind. How many ever heard of fogging? How many have ever been in a fog? Well, this not being in a fog. If I could recommend a book to you, I don't have it here handy, but you could go to, there's a place you can buy books online. It's named after a jungle. You could probably go there. It's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And I don't have the authors at the tip of my tongue, but you wouldn't need that. It's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Emotional intelligence is a phrase coined by a guy named Daniel Goleman, wrote a popular book about it. And he packaged a lot of just sound communication principles. And one of the ones he used was one that Carl Rogers came up with, the great psychologist, called fogging. And let's say Robert starts yelling at you, okay? And he gets upset. Last time I was down here, let me do a little Robert on the phone, okay? I'm not going to do I'm not going to do an impression here, but let me do a little Robert on the phone. And then come back at ring, ring, ring. Hello. Oh, hi, is this Robert? Yeah. Well, hi, Robert. This is Forrest with Santa Monica College. You called earlier today. How can I help you? Doubt if you could, never have before. Well, Robert, it sounded if you had some concerns when you called. What can I do for you? Last time I was down at your office, all I got was the runaround. Well, Robert, that is frustrating to feel as if you got the runaround. How can I help you? You told me you're going to get that report by Thursday. It's Friday. Haven't seen it yet. Probably never will. Well, Robert, what report are you referring to? See, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, Robert, if you let me know what report you're referring to, I'd be happy to track it down. I'm going to stop there, okay? Is this going okay so far? All right. I want to use that little example. I'm dealing with Robert, and I'm going to go back to the comment that was said. If he brings up the last situation, I don't want that to happen again. I could go on and on with that, but I want to demonstrate fogging. And here, I'm going to trip over my own words. The number one rule, I believe, in being assertive and resolving conflict, in my experience, I don't have psycho fluff and all that out of a book, is to give up your need to be right. I don't know any example where when you're at practicing being right, what you're doing is you're saying your ego is more important than the relationship. And when I say practicing being right, what I mean is trying to make the other person wrong. I win, you lose, I'm better, you're worse. I just don't think that works. So when Robert starts telling me, last time I was down at your office, all I got was a runaround, and starts giving me things like that, if I get defensive and get my ego up there, I'm not going to communicate at all. It's going to be like this. Fogging. When there's fog out there, and we use the word fogging because in your mind, it's a good word association. I'm going to fog this guy. Okay, I'm going to fog him really big. Okay, here's what happens is, I got to be careful there, but you know what I mean, all right? When there's fog out there and you drive to work, you drive right through the fog. In other words, it's not a wall you run into, okay? When you're working with people, I think it's important to be like the fog and let them drive right through you. Now, I'm not saying let them walk over you. Remember the assertiveness thing? But don't put something up that they want to knock back down. So let's go back to Robert. Hi, Robert, this is Forrest. You called earlier today. How can I help you? Doubt if you could. Fogging. It sounded as if you had some concerns when you called, Robert. What can I do for you today? The gentleman that brought up the comment about referring to the last situation, it's exactly what he's doing, as opposed to getting defensive and, well, blah, 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 blah. He's fogging. He's making sure that you move on into the conversation. Do you get at the college? Do you ever get, I used to get it with the county a lot. I'm a taxpayer, I pay your salary. Stuff like that. Do you ever get that? People get upset with you? You want to do some not fogging? I'm a taxpayer, I pay your salary. Well, you're cheap, okay? Or I'm a taxpayer, I pay your salary. Well, I pay taxes too, I guess I'm self-employed, okay? Or you can fog. I'm a taxpayer, I pay your salary. And how may I help you today? See how that works? As soon as you say to yourself, I'm not gonna let them talk to me that way, then they've got you. Because they've manipulated you into their corner. So Robert, he's upset for who knows what reasons. Let me not fog with Robert. Hi, Robert, this is Forrest. You called earlier today. How can I help you? Doubt if you could. Well, then what'd you call me for? I got other things to do. Hey, don't you talk to me that way. I'll talk to you any way I want. No, you won't. Yes, I will. My daddy's better than your daddy. Nah, 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 nah. And you get into an argument. I'm right. You're wrong. I'm better. You're worse. I win. You lose. Fogging, you move on and you don't go down to that level. Any questions on that? Kevin. Oh, you raised your hand. I mean, that's not a question. Okay. I'm learning. It's sort of a quiet group out there. I don't hear anybody. Maybe we should, I guess, how do you do a virtual group hug? I don't know if you can do that.
I would love to know.
Someday, in fact, Cyrus and I were talking about, we get back in that classroom where we can do, well, I don't know about group hugs, but empathy, number 4. You don't have to agree with people's feelings, but you do have to try to understand them. And you already brought that up earlier. Mark just said virtual hugs all around. But what happens is that empathy is the breakfast of champions in working with difficult people. Let me try something here, okay? I'm gonna share the screen again. There we go. Let me get rid of that. And let me take this, and I'm just gonna well, I got to do this left-handed, gang. Whoops. In fact, I'm not going to do it, gang. I hope, I hope this adds to the pleasure of the workshop, watching an instructor trying to draw. I'm just going to do that, okay? And over here, I'm trying to be too slick. Over here, this person A, okay? Over here, this person B. All right, you with me on that? What I would like you to visualize, that squiggly purple line, I'd like you to visualize it as a wall. And let's say that wall is 10 feet high. Can you do that with me? It's 10 feet high, so you can't see the other side. Now, person A sees the wall shaped as concave or curved in. Fair statement? Person B sees the wall shaped as convex or curved out. They're going to come and tell you about the shape of the wall. Who will be telling you the truth? Your response. Who's telling the truth? One sees it concave, one sees it convex. Who's telling the truth?
They're both right.
Both.
They both are. Is that what I heard?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, they both are. Now, the challenge in working with people, this is why assertiveness is so important, is to try to create a climate where they want to come to your side of the wall. I'm having fun with this now. And they inspire you to come to their side of the wall. Does that make sense? The only thing I know that does that, besides a gun, is empathy. Let's say you come to work for me and your job is to change light bulbs because you said on your job application you could change light bulbs. Well, I've hired a few people in my day. You know what I've discovered on some job applications? Fiction, okay? So I get you up on the ladder, I teach you how to change the light bulb, I ask you if you understand, and you go, uh-huh, and I walk away. I come back 15 minutes later, your finger's in the socket, your hair's on fire. Well, maybe not that bad, but I say something like this to you. You know, 15 minutes ago, I told you how to change the light bulb and you said you understood. How come you said you understood if you didn't? Weren't you listening? It's an easy job. Now, what don't you understand? Okay, so let's say I'm person B and you're person A. The way I just talked to you, did I inspire you to make the choice to come to my side of the wall? I doubt if I did. In fact, maybe I inspired you. I use the word inspire as opposed to motivate. I probably inspired you to make the decision to be defensive with me, maybe to hit me with the light bulb, to not be cooperative. Okay, look, my power lies in changing my behavior. And I don't care where you're at. You could be the president of the college, or you could be your first day on the job at an entry-level position. Every human being has a tremendous amount of power to influence the atmosphere in the moment based on how they communicate and behave. Just a tremendous amount of power. It's like the clerk with the yellow happy face badge. What do you want? As opposed to how may I help you? I mean, it's big time. How many here with this pandemic going on might have been taking a few more walks out in the neighborhood? And people, maybe when they didn't do it before, but now some of them are more likely to say good morning or good afternoon. In other words, if you look at the good side of this, I think sometimes people are talking to each other in a more pleasant way, just in terms of the neighborhood, okay? And we have exceptions to that. But doesn't that make you feel good when somebody says good morning? As opposed to walk by, that kind of, it does. It has, and you may be an introvert and may not get into it, but what happens is that's a tremendous amount of power you have in influencing the atmosphere in the moment. Because we can always strive to be someone others enjoy working with. So let me go back to the wall and then I'm going to move on. What if I said this to you? And don't grade the acting, okay? I see you're having difficulty changing the light bulb. I know it is hard to learn a job the first time. I know sometimes it's been hard for me. How can I help? How do you feel about that statement? Don't grade the acting. How many feel better? Do you think you might be more likely to come to my side of the wall? And that's because I used empathy. I know it can be difficult to learn a job the first time. I listen to you as a learner and not as a judge. Okay? Why weren't you listening to me? Why didn't you do this? I listen to you as a learner and not as a judge. And doing that, I'm probably inspiring you to make a choice to be more open with me and communicate with me. I'm talking about what typically happens. I realize there's exceptions to that. But my power lies in doing that. Just like when I can come into this virtual classroom and you can, in the first 5 minutes, you've got an impression of me. Okay. And as we go along and you learn a little about my journey, sometimes that impression may change, but I could come in, okay, sit down, shut up. I'm smart. You're not. That's why you're in here. Let's do this class. It's like the boss who sends everybody to training, but they don't go for themselves and they're the ones who need it. Right. That kind of thing. And so we just have I get tongue tied trying to say that. We have a tremendous amount of power. Let me stop the sharing the screen there. So that's what listening with empathy is from the perspective that I have. And I do think it's important to do that. Thank you. Offer your help if appropriate. Their concern may be valid. Hey, they may be right. Robert may have really got some bad news when he was there in terms of how he was treated. But again, if you, Isabel and I had a friend, his name is John Perry. He passed away in September. He was a former aeronautical and research engineer and physicist for NASA. So I don't know why he hang out with me. My parents were just happy I got to the next grade. But he wrote a book. The book I recommend it highly, not because I know John, but because it's brilliant in its simplicity. And it's called Creating a Future of Your Choice, a do-it-yourself guide to empowerment. And I'm putting together a workshop using John's work that I hope to get out in July or August in dealing with this pandemic. And the empowerment that we have is do it yourself in how we deal with it, because sometimes we can't control our circumstance. But one of the things he said, and I already referred to it, is when we're listening to others, we need to throw a blanket over the prism of our own experience and listen to others as a learner and not as a judge. And if we do listen as a learner, we will hear in every story, we will find in every story we hear someone tell us about that journey, we will find gems of inestimable value. And I think when you're dealing with Robert, you're going to find gems of value, may not about his personal life, but gems of value about what you may be able to do to help him move on with whatever his need is. But you can only do that as if you listen as a learner. Is your meter on tilt with that one? I don't know, I hope not, but offer your help. Their concern may be valid. Listen as a learner. When being manipulated, be an SOB, okay? If you're filling in the blanks there, I won't type it up on the board. The S stands, I'm on number 6. The S stands for smile. Let me take this Kahlua is excellent. The F stands for firm. Sometimes a smile is not appropriate. The O stands for objectives. And the B stands for bridge, or bridge back to your objectives. So if you wanted to draw a little arrow back to the O, bridge back to your objectives. Let's go back to Robert and let me model this with fogging and empathy and staying assertive. Hi, Robert, see if I remember what I said to you. Hi, Robert, this is Forrest. You called early today. How can I help you? Doubt if you could. Well, it sounded if you had some concerns when you called, fogging, bridge back. What can I do for you today? You told me to get that report. The last time I was down at your office, all I got was a runaround. You see my hands up here. Well, Robert, that is frustrating to feel as if you got the runaround, fogging. How can I help you? And I bridge back to what? My job. You told me to get that report by Thursday. You told me you get the report by Thursday. It's Monday and I haven't seen it yet. Well, Robert, what report are you referring to? And you bridge back to your job. See, I know what you're talking about. Well, Robert, if you let me know what report you're referring to, I'd be happy to track it down. See what I'm doing? I'm bridging back to my objectives and not going down to his level and let that manipulation take me down the wrong road. The other thing is, if I bridge back to my job, I'm bridging back to what I know, because he may be really great at pushing my buttons and those kinds of things. So I fog SOB him. I know, Cyrus, maybe you can relate to this. I was in a classroom. Actually, it was an auditorium. I was doing a keynote on some subject for a conference. And there were a couple hundred people in the room. So I'm up there all nervous, and that kind of thing. And I said something, I don't recall. Oh, I know, it was nonviolent and legal organizational guerrilla warfare, how to overthrow organizations internally by creating bloodless coups without being apprehended. That was the title of my talk. It was how to be a subversive employee. And I'm there talking like I am now. And this guy blurts out, he's in the front row in a suit and all that kind of stuff. And there you go, one of those pie in the sky instructors giving advice that'll never work in the real world. Blah, and he went on and on. You've got it out, blankety blank, da 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 da, and he just ripped me up. Okay? In front of everybody. He's acting like the south end of a horse going north. Visualize that. Anyway, I'm up there and now I have options. Hey, don't you call me that. Hey, Dubba. Or, you know what I'm thinking? Fog SOB this guy. So I'm going to be assertive. I'm going to be honest and move on. In some cases, you may be right. My advice may not work. Is that an honest statement? Sure. And then I went back, but I think in this case, it's worth a try and bridge back to my objectives. Taking care of me, taking care of him, taking care of the audience, and moving on and staying out of an argument. I fog SOB'd the guy. That's the choice I made, as opposed to getting into what? An argument. Any questions? Okay. Number 7. Don't use the word should. Or words like that. How many ever messed up? Okay. And somebody said, you shouldn't have done that. How many ever been late to work? And the boss said, you should have been to work on time. Or you said something and you said, you shouldn't talk to me that way. Or the one I love, you should have been here yesterday. Try doing that. What you want to focus on is the future. You should have been to work on time. Bring up a fact. This morning you were 20 minutes late. I need you to work on time for these reasons, and then give options. Stay away from you shouldn't feel that way. That's a poor communication technique because you're telling people how to feel. And what right do you have to do that? You shouldn't take it personal. Well, it's personal to them. So I can see this is upsetting. Empathy. What can we do next time so this doesn't happen? And I go back to Robert. Remember when he was here before? And that's, again, what you're trying to do, as opposed to you should have done this, you should have done that, you should have done this. Student registers and they're a day late. You should have been here yesterday. Well, maybe the only option is, here's what you can do next time to take this class, and maybe they have to do it next semester. They may not like the answer, but now you're empowering them with information where if they want to make a choice to deal with their situation, they can, as opposed to laying the guilt trip on them that they should have been here yesterday. I think people get sick of that. I think it's poor communication. So I try to you're always that way. You're never this way. I try to stay away from words like that. Okay. I'm having fun. 3, 2, 1. This is another thinking on your feet like fog SOB. I'm on number 8. Let's say you come up with an idea at a staff meeting, if I don't know if you're a supervisor out there with your employees, or even at home, you come up with an idea and you get pushback. All right, that never happens, right? Is an assertive technique called a negative inquiry. 3, and I do it 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's say you don't like what I just said. So I'm going to say this. Tell me 3 things you don't like about the way I just said this. Tell me 3 things you don't like about my explanation. Tell me 3 things you don't like about the new procedure. Tell me 3 things you don't like about the way I looked at you. Tell me 3 things you don't like. What is it that you don't like about what happened there? And if they're manipulating you with criticism, they won't have an answer. Okay? But they may have 3 things. And I'm not looking for just 3. It's just a word association. Maybe come up with 1 or 2. The 2 is tell me 2 things you do like about the way I explained this. Tell me 2 things you do like about the workshop today. Tell me 2 things that you like about the new procedure. And I'm trying to prompt some constructive focus from them, and they may come up with nothing. Then number 1 is, if there's one thing I could do differently next time, if there's one thing I could change and improve on next time, what would that be? And I'm trying to get a constructive comment. But I'm starting off with, tell me what you don't like. I'm letting them vent or share with me what they don't like. If they're manipulating me, they won't have an answer, or it'll be something that's not valuable, but then they may come up with some things that it really are. And that's what I do. I used to do this with staff all the time. Okay, tell me 3 things you don't like about the change as we go through change. I could ask you, tell me 3 things you don't like about the pandemic. Okay, tell me 2 things you do like about it. And that's pretty hard to find, right? But again, I don't know, maybe you've improved relationships with your family because you're Zooming and meeting with them on every weekend and you didn't talk to them for 6 months before. There may be some things that come out of this. How many watch that? It's on, I don't know, one of the stations on TV, Some Good News, SGN. I can't remember the name of the comedian that does it. I really recommend you just go to YouTube and look up SGN, and that stands for Some Good News. And you are going to be, your mind is, you know what stress is? Stress is when you're somewhere you don't want to be, or you're thinking about something that you don't want to think about. Think about that, okay? That's your stress. When you watch Some Good News, it's communication. It's a way for you to get your mind off places you don't want to be, because you're going to want to be there listening to it. Okay, just a tip on the side. You didn't pay for that, but I share that with you anyway. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, get help if you're in over your head. Communication. How many have been told the wrong thing, or been given the runaround, or have been sent off to the wrong place? Get help if you're in over your head. That's a sign of competence. The person that doesn't get help if they're in over their head, that's a sign of the ego getting in the way again. Get help. Follow through on your promises. Okay. Gravity works. You lose your balance on a bicycle, you fall off. Okay. And I think accountability does. So follow through on your promises. It says that the grammar isn't really good there. It will make them, the person you're dealing with, less difficult to deal with the next time. Okay. Because now you're building trust into the equation. Don't forget your sense of humor. Okay, the real jerks I know have to start at 0 to get theirs back. How many have ever done anything stupid? Fine, raise your hand if you've done something stupid. A couple of your hands went up really quick. What time is it? 11:50. We still got some time in the day, okay? But what you have to do is sometimes look back and laugh. Sometimes when things don't go well, okay? I was in a hurry. I was coming to Santa Monica from Long Beach. Okay, I live in Long Beach, and I had a meeting up there, and I can get to New York on a plane faster than I can get to Santa Monica on the 405 freeway, okay? I was low on gas. I had to get gas. There was no way I was gonna get there putting along. You know what the 405 stands for? 4 or 5 miles an hour, okay? So I knew I wasn't gonna get there. And so I hurried and stressed out. I went to the gas station, ran in, gave the guy my money, you pay first, ran back out, got in my car and left. Around LAX at about Manchester, I left, but I forgot to put gas in the car. And I ran out of gas at around 7 in the morning at LAX near Manchester. Okay, top that one for stupidity. It wasn't funny at the time, but now I look back on it and laugh, because that's how you keep your sense of humor. Life's a rough draft. Number 12, if you stick your foot in your mouth, start over again, all right? And after you've successfully handled an encounter with a difficult person, pat yourself on the back, congratulate yourself. That's taking care of yourself in the assertive communication grid. So those are 13 things. We could go with probably 13 more, but those are 13 things that you might want to keep in mind. I hope they have some practicality for you and you can use them as you're working. And again, using professional language and those kinds of things as we go along. Any questions?
Yeah, so very
Yes.
good point. Let's take a pause for a second. So see if anybody has any questions, definitely raise up. We want to take a little bit of time to raise the opportunity to go over these 13 wonderful topics or 13 wonderful suggestions, your baker's dozen. Does anybody have any questions on any of these that we just previously discussed with Forrest?
Carla? Oh, no. See the raise.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I appreciate you adding number 12 because, as you said, we are human. And
Yes.
we make mistakes just like everybody else, but it's nice to kind of see it as part of these 13 things because it's like it reminds us that we are human. But, you know, as you said, they're like, sincerely apologize. Oh, I'm so sorry. I miscommunicated for whatever reason, because I'm sure that they could be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, it happens sometimes. It's like, I think showing the human side of us versus like, because I used to work in insurance and I remember that people would tell me, I appreciate the way that you treat me because you don't view me as a dollar sign, you view me as a person. And I think that when you get on a human level, it makes a difference.
Yes, it does. It makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it? I've been looking for this poster and I can't find, here it is. I don't know if you can read this, but it says, be a better part of someone's day. I don't know, there might be glare there with the light and that kind of thing. Be a better part of someone's day. And I think when you admit mistakes and you, I think you become a better part of someone's day because you're showing that you really respect them. You show them that respect to me is just treating people as if they matter. And so if I admit a mistake and I let you know, I'm letting you know that you matter because I want to get it right and help you. I want to be a better part of your day and not a barrier to it. It's the ultimate form of respect. The other thing too, my dad used to say, the mistakes you admit to are the ones you won't lay awake at night thinking about. I think it's a way to improve relationships and trust. So thank you. Any other questions?
Sorry, Forrest. I think we're getting a little bit of feedback. I just want to make sure that. All right. Are there any other additional comments? Anyone that kind of stood out to anybody?
Hi, Forrest. This is Fariba.
Oh, hi.
We met.
Yeah.
You remember? Yes. I just
You've
wanted
heard
to
my
say-
jokes before.
Still enjoy them though. I just want to say it's as informative as it was, and it's a good reminder of the things we learned with you the first time. So really, thank you for doing this.
Well,
It
thank
is
you for having me.
impressive and amazing still.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you feel that way. That I appreciate that feedback.
Can't wait for the next one.
Well, we'll
Stay healthy.
well, you keep asking me, I'll keep showing up. I don't have to
We'll
drive
keep
the
asking.
405 freeway now, but I'll keep showing up.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. And I think we have Kevin that might be next.
Hi, Forrest. I just had a question. It's more about your own journey as a teacher and instructor. And I was fascinated when you said that you were a prison guard earlier in your life situation, which is certainly not a really same kind of customer service oriented situation. And I was wondering how that influenced your thinking as you got to learn to deal with difficult situations. Obviously, you probably encountered some in that world, but how those two sides of your life kind of balanced out.
Well, I could get really heavy on you with that one. I'm not going to get too heavy. It influenced everything I am. First of all, it told me how to accept failure. Because when I left prisons, I felt I was a failure at it. I wasn't good at it because I went in there very idealistic, I have a degree in criminology, not police science, but a Bachelor of Science degree in criminology. And I wanted to go in there and really, truly help people, okay? And I found myself in a paramilitary kind of environment. And I was in the military. I'm a Vietnam vet and all that kind of stuff. And that's a long time ago. And I just discovered that this wasn't the right thing for me. So, and I'm going to be very frank with you. I started seeing the world as black, white, and brown. I got caught up in, that's how that world works, okay? And I don't think it was from a prejudicial standpoint, but I just started seeing it that way. And I just didn't like the person I was becoming. So, having said that, and to answer your question, it helped me discover the kind of person I wanted to become. And I'm still striving to get there. Does that help?
Understood. Yeah, thanks. It's just an interesting contrast in
Yeah.
situations.
Well, I worked in a couple of institutions. It's a lot. I didn't stay for long, a year and a half. And I did have guys I went to high school with. I grew up in, I don't know if you know where Highland Park is in Northeast LA, but it's got its serious sides. And it became a really good experience for me. But like a lot of good experiences, how many of you ever had a teacher, for example, that maybe got on your case and later on it was the best thing that ever happened to you, but you didn't like it at the time? So that's the experience. Anything else?
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for asking.
All right. I think that we're good to keep moving on. If
Well, what I have and the way I designed this is I have some of this stuff we can just go through rather quickly because it's stuff you can take and read and that kind of thing. I have the first on page 6, the first rule of communication is to capitalize the C in communication, but be ready to open and listen. And I have levels of listening. There's ignoring. Some people near the end, pretend listening. And anybody ever come up to you after the weekend and they're telling you all about the weekend? You go, but you're not listening to a word they say. I got my own life to lead. Selective listening is what we do in classrooms. We tune in, I like that point. Up, tune out, tune out. You might do that at dinner around the table. Attentive listening is just trying to pay attention. It's typically when you might be asking questions. Active listening is the listening. And that's paraphrasing back to make sure you understand. Let's go back to Robert. Hi, Robert, you say you needed that report by Thursday? No, I needed it by, they say you needed that report by Monday? No, I said I needed it by Thursday. Weren't you listening? Well, you know what the honest answer would be? Nope. Okay. The red button. Everybody has a red. Let's give you this analogy, metaphor, whatever you want to call it. The boss is teaching you to do something. It's got 10 steps, okay? You get to step 3. The boss gets to step 3 and he says, this is the red button. Under no circumstances do you ever push that red button. Never push that red button. And if it needs to be pushed, you come and ask me. Okay? Then they go to step 4 and they explain step 4. Well, while they're explaining step 4, what are you thinking about? I think you're thinking about step 3, the red button. Is that a fair statement? And so you don't hear anything about step 4. Then later on, the boss comes up and says, okay, explain step 4 to me. I don't know. Weren't you listening? Nope. I was thinking about the red button. If you have Robert yelling at you, or maybe even ask you a question, and you start thinking about where you could solve that, they may say some other stuff, and you don't even hear it. It's not that you're being rude. It's just your mind took you somewhere for the moment, and you might have missed a key point, like, I need that report by Thursday. Make sense? And so what you do is actively listen. Carl Rogers again. I just want to make sure I get it correctly, Robert. You need it by Thursday. You paraphrase back to make sure you understand. When he said, weren't you listening? That's manipulation. And I'm not going to say to him, no. I said, Robert, I'm the fog. I want to make sure I get it correctly. You need it by Thursday. Because you know what? I want him out of my life. Okay? And I want to move on. And so you may think that's not cold. It's just, in customer service in your job, you go to a store, you run a store, you want your customers to come back, don't you? Well, sometimes in the line of work you're in, sometimes you want your customers to go away? It's just, you bridge back. And that's what active listening is. Empathic listening is active listening with empathy. oh, Robert, I can see this is frustrating. Can you go through that with me one more time? It's using empathy if there's a strong emotion or a feeling. I have it down there. Empathic listening should be used. And I say, what is empathy? And empathy is acknowledging the concerns or feelings of another individual. Sometimes it's a tone in your voice. Let's see what we can do. It's not getting down on one knee and say, tell me about your pain. And by the way, empathy is not agreeing with people's feelings. It's just acknowledging them. Okay, sometimes when you agree with feelings, you go down to that passive approach, if you remember my grid, and so that's not going to work, but it is acknowledging them. The pushback on that, if you use empathy, sometimes if you get somebody that might see you as a soft touch because they see it as touchy-feely, and it's not touchy-feely. Sometimes it can be firm. I know this is difficult, but this is what you need to do. I know you're upset, but if you study a little better, next time you won't get an F, that kind of thing. It's just acknowledging their feelings because they are their feelings. That's all it is. In fact, there's my quote from John Perry. But the book was Creating a Future of Your Choice, a do-it-yourself guide to empowerment. In the middle, I have some active listening techniques. You see the smile there? How many of you ever had a gentle smile when you're communicating and people, and it's a serious situation, but you just have a gentle smile and they say, you think this is funny? No, I don't think it's funny, but I'm not going to say that, but oh, no, let's see what, I'm going to bridge back and keep moving on. Okay. On the next page, page 7, just some listening. I mentioned the first rule of communication is listening. The second rule is also that, mental distractions, externals. I'm going to tell you how old I am. If you look on that page, look on externals, telephones and pagers. Maybe we should change that handout, right? Where do they still use pagers? Hospitals. Hospitals. They're more reliable. And they use pagers there. But I remember I had a boss, an HR director. Pagers started, some of you may be a little young, but we used to wear them on our belt like we wear our phone. My boss said, get a pager. Kept saying, get a pager. And I kept resisting, okay? And I said, what do I need to get a pager for? What if I need to get a hold of you? And I said, I'm here every day. This is before the internet and that kind of thing. And he says, well, what if I only need to get a hold of you on the weekend? And this is HR. I said, oh, we're going to do a recruitment on the weekend? What do I need a pager for? So he ordered me to get a pager. So one day I walk in with, there it is. We used to wear them on our belt. Oh, you got a pager. Yep, sure did. And I walked into my office. I was wearing my garage door opener. And he mistook it for a pager. So see why I'm out on my own? Why we don't hear others. Take a read at those and see if you fall into any of those traps. I know I do. Why we don't hear others. Little self-check there. I'm a dreamer. I drift off. Sometimes I drift off when I'm giving a presentation. Okay. I don't know if I'm giving you enough time I can't see your faces looking up and that kind of thing, but by the way, I would like you to stay there. You go down to a placator. These words aren't original to me. I got this from somewhere way back when, but agreeing with everything you hear just to be nice and to avoid conflict. That's that passive part of it. It does not mean it does not mean you're a good listener what it means is that sometimes you just want to move on in life and not deal with it. Do you ever get that when you're communicating with people? So I don't think all of these are bad, okay? But sometimes you have to be careful why we don't hear others. And Admiral Rickover, that's always a great quote. That's the give up your need to be right thing. Great minds discuss ideas, not people. What I have on the next page, and I'm going to be done with you in about 10 minutes or so, just in terms of your comfort zone. Is that okay? I can go on and on, but
Question.
yes, I'm here.
The previous point, why we don't hear, where would you put, sometimes people might have something on their mind, maybe some personal problem, and even though someone is in front of them talking to them, they may not listen because of their personal issues. Where would that fall under?
I don't know if you could, I don't know if it would, maybe Dreamer, but I don't know it would fall under any of those because this isn't comprehensive. I just think it's bad timing. It's bad timing. I don't know if I can say this right. My son sent this to us the other day. It was written out. He said, I was talking to you, weren't you listening? Okay. And then the next paragraph is, he says, that's an odd way to start a conversation. And if you get the gist of that, they were talking, but you weren't listening. Now you tune in and you start to listen. And I just think sometimes the timing's bad. And one of the things that you may go to a staff meeting and maybe you had an altercation with somebody, maybe you got something going on at home. One of the things that employees, most of my work's in leadership and supervision. That's where I originally did this with the city, okay? And I don't know of any employees who check their heart and brain in at the door when they show up for work. We bring the whole package. And so if somebody's talking to me and I've got something going on, if I've got whatever it may be, if I see that and I'm communicating, I'm saying, would there be a better time to talk? And I'm going to try to work with you on that. Maybe there won't be if it's an emergency, but I think that's where empathy comes in. We have to acknowledge that all people are alike in different ways. And sometimes we will be ships passing in the night and it's nobody's fault. Nobody's trying to do something to you. It's just being human. And I'm not trying to rationalize away poor listening, but there's sometimes, I've been married 49 years, okay? 50 years next year. I hit the lotto on marriage. And my wife and I do this all the time. She's there watching something and I'm sitting there and I'll say something, but she has her mind on what she's watching on TV or vice versa. And so I just have to acknowledge the fact that just because I say something doesn't mean everybody has to stop everything they're doing and listening to me. Okay, that'd be a vain kind of an approach. So I think that's being human, Rebecca, and I think sometimes that happens. And to me, trust, if I was going to define trust, it's the measure of the quality of a relationship I have with someone. The higher the quality of a relationship, the higher the level of trust. And let's say I'm talking to you, Rebecca, and my mind goes somewhere, okay? And you acknowledge that. And I'm not being rude. Sometimes I could be rude, but and it goes there some. And you say, "Oh, I see you got something on your mind." Yeah, I'm sorry, Rebecca. Let's start over. Okay, let's start over. As opposed to you saying, "Well, you should have been listening." If you say you should have been listening, I don't think our relationship's going to be improved. But if you use some empathy and acknowledge that, again, there's exceptions because sometimes you can be rude in the way you work with people, but. I tune out on political discussions, like in family, and they get into politics and stuff. I tune out. In fact, I don't know if you know who Johnny Mathis is, the singer. I start humming Johnny Mathis songs in my mind. Okay, I do. Chances are, da da da. I just start humming those in my mind, and I quit listening. Now that's probably rude, but okay. I'll pay the price if that's what you think. Because there's some things I just don't want to get involved with. So there's a whole realm of things. But sometimes it's being human. Our mind goes somewhere, our mind wanders. We have all these things going on in our lives now with this pandemic. Sometimes it is hard to stay focused. And you can't rationalize it away, but we don't check our heart and brain in at the door when we show up for work. We bring the whole package. That's what bosses need to understand. You don't motivate people, you inspire motivation. people motivate themselves. And if you can create a climate where, here's the other thing about communication. I'm digressing here just a little bit. People will work and communicate with you when there's one thing present: psychological safety. If I have to be afraid of how you're going to respond to me, if I have to be in fear of how you're going to respond to me, then the psychological safety isn't there, and I'm going to be less authentic and open with you because I don't want to get burned. It's like the teacher who asks you a question and you don't know the answer, and they say, well, didn't you study last night? I mean, they put you on the spot, and they don't make it safe. Now, that might inspire you to study the next night. Don't get me wrong. But what happens is we're afraid to go into the classroom because we don't want to feel embarrassed when we don't know something. People will work with you when they're psychologically safe. And I'm the one, if I'm working with you, that has to try to create that climate by doing those 13 things that I mentioned so we can open up communication. Because I don't want to be burned all the time. On the next page, I'm not going to go through, we don't have time, but I thought body language, boy, you talk about a big communicator. Until your body language and tone is in sync with what you say, body language always wins, or tone. Let me give you an example. I could kill you. I could kill you. Well, that's the same sentence. Different meaning? Certainly. I can contradict what I say. I can say something positive and make it negative by my tone. That's a good idea. Well, the way I said that, is that a good idea? No. But what did I say? That's a good idea. Body language, voice, tone, and pitch. So let me see if I can put this down a little bit. And so I fold my arms, okay? What kind of message am I sending? Defensive? Closed off? Stubborn? Maybe I'm cold. Maybe I have a stain on my shirt, okay? I don't know who said this, somebody famous. We judge others by their behavior. We judge ourselves by our intentions. So when I fold my arms, I know the intention. All you can do is guess what the intention is. You don't know. You're judging the behavior. And you could go down through all of these, and not all of them are bad. Rolling the eyes can be empathetic. Oh, I'm sorry that happened. Or it can be non-empathetic. At a staff meeting, somebody comes up with an idea, and everybody around the table goes, oh, geez, that kind of thing. But you have to be careful of body language. You might want to take this, and when you have some time on your own, maybe when you get back together, even virtually, go through some of these. If you have virtual staff meetings, and have some fun at a staff meeting. And just talk about what these mean. But be careful. Here's my point in all of this. We judge others by their behavior. We judge ourselves by our intentions. So make sure you know the intention before you judge. Be smart about it. If somebody comes through the door with a machete, don't assume they're a sushi chef. But I do think it's important to give a little room for error, okay? And some of you have different body language. It's just who you are. It's how you are. Next page, same thing, same point. It's about voice tone. How may I help you today if you're angry? How many of you got off on the wrong start with tone? How may I help you today? And they say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to come. Let me start over again. You start over again. But angry, maybe you're angry. Maybe that's not a good time to be communicating. Or upset down at the bottom. That's rarely a good time to be communicating, unless you're venting. Annoyed? Is annoyed on there? Yeah, annoyed. How may I help you today? Well, I'm sorry I interrupted your life. Concerned, confident, and helpful. You want to show concern, be confident and helpful. But you ever go into one of these overpriced hamburger joints like Applebee's or Chili's? Hi, I'm Larry, your server. How may I serve you? Ah, shut up, Larry. I want a glass of wine. You know, it comes across a little too, but maybe it's really Larry. That's how he is. That's who he is. Okay? You don't know someone until you know their journey. Period. Okay? Inflection and pitch to thank you for calling, or thank you for calling. I don't know. I'm not an actor. But I put that in there. Just communication. We talk about 3, 2, 1 and fogging and being an SOB, but it's all in the context of our body language. So you have to be careful about that. This, I don't know how much it relates to communication on page 10, but it's reproduced with permission. In fact, I haven't copyrighted any of these handouts. So if you want to, if they have, reproduce them anytime you want. But the 10 skills to develop as an effective team member, You don't have to do that here. I put it in a lot of my classes because it relates to communication. But if I listen carefully to what others say, that is communication. If you circle the 1, that means you don't listen very well. If you circle the 10, you're really great at it. So you can give yourself a score. And if you really want to have some guts, give it to your peers and ask them to score you. You might get a different number. I used to use these 10 things in performance appraisals. I didn't, not all 10, but I would pick 3 or 4 that were important. I would give that employee a score based on how I saw it. I would sit down with them prior to the performance appraisal and give them my thoughts, and they could do it to me. Okay, I don't believe in one-way performance appraisals. I think that is so wrong. I think employees should be able, workers should be able to evaluate their supervisors because you're going to learn from them. And so we would talk about it, and I would get some insight. They would get some insight, and we talk about how we can make it better next time, not how we messed up last time. Dwelling on the past, you want to be informed by it, but you don't want to be driven by it. And if I was in person there, I was going to give you a card. It's called Be No Ego. I can't do that. So what I have, this is from, down at the bottom, it's from Sam Parker. It's called InspireYourPeople.com. I strongly suggest you go to that website, okay? That poster I just showed you, that's from the website. I don't have any financial in it. I just learned about this. But imagine a world without it. This is just true with communication. There would be no, and I have some things that Sam Parker listed. Now, imagine a world without ego. Go ahead and take a moment and read those. Some good advice there. Okay. And down there where if you have a pen or pencil, that's how to be no ego. It's stay humble. That's the first one. Stay humble. We're a small part of the world, and patience and service should be our top priorities. Be teachable / coachable. Be teachable. John Kennedy said, the President Kennedy, sometimes we accept everything we hear from our forebears, and we get locked in the comfort of our opinion to avoid the discomfort of thought. And being teachable, sometimes people aren't teachable. They're staying locked in the comfort of their opinion. It's not, especially communicating with people. They ask you a question, not so they can learn from you, but it's an opening for them to tell you what they think. Okay, it's a manipulative kind of a thing. But be teachable and coachable. I had my last car I had, it was a pickup truck, and I had a bumper sticker. It said, "Don't believe everything you think." I think that's good advice. Listen more. Listen more. Give people your time. Listen to them. That's a gift. And the next one is appreciate people. I think we have to try to enjoy others' contributions. There's a quote, a pretty famous quote that said, "It's amazing how much can get done when nobody cares about who takes the credit." And the last one, just relax. Listen to music, take a walk, go somewhere you want to go. Use moderation. Talk it out. Exercise a little bit. Challenge your mindset. There's some things you can do. And if you go to that website, you're going to find a lot of neat stuff. Okay. I have a card here that I was usually pass out. I don't know how I could get them to you, but I can. And I'd be happy to mail one to you, or mail some maybe that you could pick up when you're back at your office, or mail them to your home. I just mailed the card. And if you care to have that, my email address, publicsectorexcellence@gmail.com. And if you email me that, I'll send you the card, because I bought the suckers and they're sitting all over the place here. I got to get rid of them. So that's the story. A couple of questions at the bottom of the page. When you have time at staff, I put in there, where do you think our egos get in the way of teamwork? And if you want to add the word communication, and then how can we help each other minimize that? And the last page is just a quote on listening from quite a renowned MD at the UC San Francisco School of Medicine. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Forrest.
Well, thank you. I'll see you in a couple of weeks with customer service.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
In fact, everything we talk about today, when I do a full customer service, we can weave this in today. So if some of you are coming back, that'll work fine. If they're new people, it'll make sense too. So, okay.
Yes, wonderful.
Thank
yes,
you.
Forrest.
Well, thank you. Best wishes. Stay safe out there, as they say. And
Yeah, we'll hopefully see you 2 weeks from now, same time, same place. I think it's June. You'll be notified. I don't know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
So much
Forrest.
for the
nice
Forrest.
meeting you this way. Bye-bye.
thanks.
Thank you.
And I'll email everybody the handouts as well as the evaluations and so forth. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome. Take care.